Hello everyone, Big Seven here, back for another SuperCoach review video. Apologies if I sound a little bit worse than usual. I am a bit sick this week, so you'll have to deal with that, unfortunately. I scored 2,118 this week, which on the surface is a fairly decent score. But in reality, it is a little bit of a sickly score, mainly saved by a couple of factors, fielding a lot of the right rookies and Bontempelli vice captain. Um, Unfortunately, the trades I did for the week, I brought in Took Miller, which obviously went fairly pear shaped. And so yeah, the trades I wanted to do Chandler. Who was it? Uh, yeah, so I wanted to do Jinby, Chandler, and Baker to Miller, Roberts, and Dylan Williams. But Dylan Williams wasn't named on the Thursday night, so the adjustment that I made, unfortunately, um, was instead of getting Wilmot out, I wanted to do Wilmot to Williams, but I couldn't afford to do Wilmot to Johnson, so Chandler was the one that made way quite regrettably. I didn't really want to trade him out, but I guess my option was keeping Chandler and going early on Seamus Mitchell, which hindsight says clearly the correct option, or I could have done Chandler to Matty Johnson, which I wasn't really happy about. My gut feel said it was a bad trade. Did it anyway, and it's one of the few times that my gut feel has been correct. I'm normally a head over heart kind of person, depending on how I feel. But it's generally try and be head over heart. But I should have gone the heart in this instance. Still, I'm at 2,500 rank. It's not anything to cry about. Um, Took Miller definitely hurts. This is the worst time of the season to have to sideways premiums. But Took Miller being out for an extended period of time, it has to happen. It just happened to happen on the week that I traded him in. And look, it's really easy to go through your head and say, oh, I could have done this different. I could have done that different. I was pretty set on Took Miller, so I can't really live with any regrets. I mean, you pick one of the most durable players of the last few seasons, and he gets injured in your first game. I mean, it's just a case of what can you do. It's just right decision, wrong outcome, unfortunately. So on to the rest of the team. I'll try and skim through it. Dawson, first poor game for a while, 78. He's still fine. 120 average for the season. Nick Dacos, one day I'm going to captain him. I just, I don't know. I always find some kind of excuse not to captain him, and he just keeps on delivering. It's not going to be this week either, but I will captain him one day. 145, 135 average. My goodness, this kid is something special. James Sicily, 105. On the surface, it looks like a bad score, but he was getting more of the ball this week, and also had a few kick-ins. So there is some positive signs to take away from that. Nice and cheap for non-owners to snaffle him up. And then on to the rookie defenders. McKenna, he's been poor since Rich has returned to the side, unfortunately. He's someone that can go break even of around about 62. Yeah, someone that can definitely go. Wilmot scored poorly. What was it, 39? He's not in a great role, but he's been scoring in spite of that. So um, a poor score felt inevitable, and I wish that I had Chandler instead of Wilmot, but you can't look back and I don't know. You can't dwell on it. You got to move forward. And I remember watching a chess video, probably a couple of years ago now, and the worst after after people make a blunder, it's a lot of the time they'll follow that up with another blunder and a third blunder consecutively. So it needs to be a week where, and yes, Took was unlucky. Wilmot keeping him over Chandler, not really. I should have just kept Chandler. It's important not to follow up a blunder with another blunder, though. So trying to stay level-headed this week. Tyler Young, 27, really shouldn't have been on my field. I should have gone for Samson Ryan, who I had on my bench. Could have swung Sheasel or Zeeble down back and fielded Ryan instead. I just didn't think that through enough. Ruckman don't score that well against Melbourne. Samson Ryan has shown promise as well. It's Tyler Young. Yeah, he'll score his 60 odds occasionally, but he's a key defender. These low scores can't really be surprised by it. And then Cowan, he's kind of dropped off a cliff. 44 average for the season now, 35 for the last week, and a break even of 41. And kind of sad, but it's probably 50-50 if he makes that or not. So another one that can be traded out. Unfortunately, I have issues in my midfield. Clayton Oliver, brought him in for 700, and he hasn't scored anywhere near that. Had a flu game, had the flu coming into this week, so limited preparation. Bit unfortunate with that. What can you do? I'll back him to bounce back. He'll be my captain this week. Bontempelli touched on him, 182. Started off the year having, playing a lot of games where he would fade out for a quarter, and the last couple of weeks have been phenomenal. Very happy with the Bont. And then the problem children. Took Miller, injured. I'm not angry at him at all. And obviously, not angry at Took. It's just unfortunate circumstance. He's a top bloke as well, so hopefully we see him back sooner rather than later. LDU, this has been a frustrating pick. Now, at least I got him for his 240 scores. But last 3 weeks, so he missed round 3 against Hawthorn, plum matchup. And then last couple of weeks, I kind of excused down to tough matchups. But a 72 this week against Gold Coast, who I think had been the easiest midfield to score against going into last week. I'm not convinced he's 100%. He obviously had that calf laid out in round 3. Round 4, that lead up, it sounded like he was building into it. I'm not convinced that he's fit. And he had 69% time on ground this week. Rumour was that he was struggling with a bit of an ankle injury. The only thing worse, in my opinion, than an injured premium that isn't playing is an injured premium that is playing, because then they're scoring these 70s and 80s and break even of 160, going to drop a bunch of cash. 20k drop with a 117. I'm not even convinced he goes 100 this week. So I'm very eager to move LDU on. I know it's not typical. It's normally bad to make a sideways premium move at this stage of the season, but I think it'll be worse if I ignore LDU and he just continues to drop these bad scores, maybe drops to like a 480 and need to get rid of him anyway. I'm just not convinced he's fit. I don't trust the North Medicos after the late out in round 3, and he's gone for me. He's gone. The other one on that line that is going to be the one that is safe, that's Errol Goulden. Only scored 47, did rack up a bit of the ball though, and he was uncharacteristically inefficient this week. So still averaging 90 for the season, which obviously isn't ideal. I thought he could go 95 to 100 and probably still can. Just a nightmare performance. I'll back him to bounce back. Jacob Hopper, 94 score, 94 average. Very happy with his output. He's someone that I will be holding for a few weeks. He might top out at 450k, but as long as he's scoring 90 odds, I'm happy with him. Ashcroft, 76, just seems to be scoring around this range. Break-even is high enough that if you want to trade him out, you definitely can. But he does come up against Fremantle, who have been a soft matchup for midfield. So I'm happy to hold Ashcroft. If you need to trade him to get funds, understandable. Will Phillips, yeah, he's an interesting player, unfortunately. 36 score, got subbed out halfway through the third quarter, I'm pretty sure. And yeah, it's just unfortunate that 36 really tanks his cash gen. He's got a break even of 45 now. So, worst case scenario is that he gets named as a sub and comes on. And yeah, if that does happen, then he's probably not hitting his 45 break even. So, probably someone that needs to be moved on. Unless he's named. If he's named, then there's a chance he can score a 70 and restart that cash gen. Uh, on the bench, Tom Green suspended. What can you do? It's a 1 weeker. Happy to have him back this week. Owen Davey, 44. Break even is fairly high, 33. But he can sit on the bench for a bit. Maybe he can slow burn up to 250. And then Matty Johnson, I'm pretty annoyed I brought him in. Wish it had been Seamus Mitchell. Only 35 scored. He's probably on the cusp of being dropped. Need a big performance out of him if he is named. Ruckline, Sean Darcy. He's a clear ruck two for this year, in my opinion. Um, I would love to have Tim English, but I'm glad that I had that decision point in round 3 where I could have gone Darcy to English, and it really would have been a bit of a sideways trade to do that. And yes, Darcy's still 150 points behind English, but most of that is from the start of the year. The player that I have at R3 is Rowan Marshall, and look, he's probably the third or fourth best ruck for the year, but he is a mile behind Tim English. So if you've got the Darcy English combination, then you are absolutely cooking. For now, I'm going to have to hold Marshall begrudgingly. A matchup against Port Adelaide this week. He hasn't been capitalising on his soft matchups, really. He needs to do that. He needs to find a 140 at some point. Forward line. Dunkley, King, Taranto, absolute gun. Glad I started him at the discounted price. Rosie, 126 in the soft matchup, averaging 103 for the year. Tick. Jack Zeeble, chugging along nicely. Tick. 102 average with 111 last week. And then Sheasel. Sheasel's the really interesting one. Only scored 53, but he was carrying a couple of injuries into that game. And another reason why I don't really trust North Medicos because, Sheasel had, I think it was a calf injury last week. And obviously he was in a bit of doubt going into this game with the hand injury. And from what I saw, he just didn't look the same. So, and if they're trotting out Sheasel injured, then there's a good chance they're trotting out LDU injured as well. Still, assuming Sheasel is fully fit, then I'll back him to go 90 odd from here, and he'll be fine at F5. And then Fergus Green, he's been a unexpected GOAT. I've fielded him in back-to-back weeks for back-to-back 70s. He's really hitting his stride nicely, and kind of a revenge game for him because he was a part of the Dogs VFL system before coming across the Hawthorn. So, bit of a revenge game from this week. Hopefully, he can continue the scoring. Samson Ryan on the bench, 82. Mentioned him before. He's got bags of talent. He kind of put it together against Melbourne, although goal kicking let him down a bit. I'm very happy to have him in my side. Could have had Van Rooyen. I feel a little bit cheated on that as well. I feel cheated on Took, and I feel cheated on Van Rooyen. Van Rooyen was very, very close to getting the sub-vest, and then pulled out a miraculous fourth quarter to probably secure his spot for a few weeks. So Ryan over Van Rooyen could have been a monumental W, but now it's probably looking close to even. And then Matty Roberts, I mean, everyone would have brought him in. I was thankful I didn't field him. I wasn't confident on fielding a winger at a narrow ground in GMHBA against a tough opposition. And yes, he did get injured early on, but I don't think he would have scored more than 40 or 50 anyway. So, onto the trades for this week. There's a few players that are really interesting to me. First one, Will Day. coming back from a 2-week suspension, got a very low break even, 15 break even. And looking at his games for the year so far, it's really only 2 meaningful games where he's been in the current role. First game against Essendon, discard that. Game against North Melbourne, discard that. They were missing Simpkin and LDU. So he scored a 98 against Sydney and 107 against Geelong, playing full-time midfield role. And I think the scoring will be okay for Will Day in that role, probably somewhere between 100 and 105 if I had to guess. So at 450k, definitely represents value. Sorry about that. The thing I'm concerned about is his durability. Missed most of last year with an ankle injury, and I think missed a fair chunk of the season before with another ankle injury. And the other thing about him is that he was playing more bruise-free roles in the past, whereas that inside midfield role, in and under, contested, a lot of tackling. I'm just not entirely sure that the body holds up, especially coming off a couple of seasons where he probably hasn't had that conditioning. So for me, there's definitely value in Will Day, but I'm going to ignore him. The other player there's definitely value in, and probably a bit harder of a fade in my opinion, is Stephen Coniglio. 49 break even, now averaging 100 for the year. But he has had a couple of poor games in there. And yes, he does have the low break even this week. But the easy part of his fixture is gone. And it's not entirely about fixtures for me. But I think there is a propensity for him to drop another low score in there. And so while I don't think he's a bad get now, I'm hoping and thinking that I will be able to get him later in the season for around about the 500k mark, which is what he is at the moment. But I think this is the week where there's a lot of different pathways people are going to embark on. A lot of people are going to go for Day. A lot of people will go for Coniglio. There's also a lot of midfield and defensive options that people can go for. So I've mentioned I'm trading out Touk Miller and I'm trading out LDU. I'm going to assume that Phillips probably gets a sub vest, so I'll get him out of my side for now. We'll do some loop swings to make the team a bit better. Defense. Midfield. Defense. So the first player I feel a need to bring in is Seamus Mitchell. Again, wish I had have got him last week, but he looks like the clear best cash cow this week. The job security probably isn't as good as you would hope for. Hawthorn have a lot of those rebounding defender types like Bramble. Scrimshaw played out of the vest last week and comes back into the starting side this week. So his position inside isn't as secure as you would like. But with a 67 and a 79, especially with the 79 being his most recent score, even if he plays for a couple of weeks, he should make 80-ish K, maybe even more than that. So he's someone I think I don't want to go without. And so we'll take a look at so this leaves me with 1.3 million. A couple of Gold Coast guys that are very interesting in midfield. The first one of those is Matty Rowell. Has started to pick up his scoring a bit in recent weeks and could take another step up this week and future weeks with Touk Miller out of the rotation. Break even of 31. Last couple of games were 109 and 124, albeit they were against weaker midfields. So I don't mind Rowell, but the propensity to drop low scores, I think he's an avoid. The other one to consider, Braden Fiorini, scored a 79. He's a player that we've seen back into 2021 has been able to score well in the role, but he's not a coach's favourite. So I think logically speaking, he should be the next player in line to replace Took Miller. But they can also throw players like David Swallow in there. He could just get a massive role. Lockie Weller's played midfield before. Alex Davies, Sam Flanders, I think will be back soon as well. So I don't think it's cut and dry that Fiorini just defaults to being the guy that replaces Took Miller. I want to see it first. And the break even of 46 means that even if he goes 100 odd, I'll just get him in later for 25k more. The other thing to mention is an awkward price, 311k. You really want to be upgrading to premiums at this point. But look, I could see him going 100, all things going right. So that would be a monumental cash cow if you decided to pick him and all things turn out okay. But I'm not going to do that, especially with my cash situation. 1.3 mil for 2 premiums. So I want to get a defender. And if you watched my video last week, there is a defender that I put at tier 1 as he's going to be a must-have. He's going to have an amazing buy. And the break-even's fairly low. I could have got him a bit cheaper, but I'm not too displeased that I watched him instead. 98 break-even, Tommy Stewart. He just scores so easily. And with the exception of the injury game, he scored well in nearly every game. So Tommy Stewart, he's a pretty safe trade-in. And then with the final trade, I want to do something a little bit different. And I think this is the week to do it because a lot of people, they're going to be diverging on a Will Day path or Cornelio as their upgrade, which means I think the premium midfield is a good spot to be different. Why are these filters weird? Oh no, I'm just scrolled down too far. Okay, so there's really 3 options that I'm tossing up between. Sammy Walsh, second game back from injury, 130. He's going to be a star. If you're not calling him a star already, then you will be in the very near future. He's capable of being, I think, a top 3 or 4 midfielder in SuperCoach for this year. I guess the main doubt around him is his injury history. I think it was a syndesmosis a couple of years ago and might have been an ankle coming into this year as well. So just not as durable as some of the other options, but he does have a pretty good scoring ceiling. He's in a side that possesses the ball quite a lot. And I think it was 91% CBAs last weekend. So no doubts around the role as well. So Sammy Walsh is the first one I'm considering. Second one I'm considering Zach Merritt. Once again, apologies about that. Zach Merritt, 107 average to start the year. Copped a Finn McGuinness tag in round 1, which deflates that a bit. And really looking at his past 18 months, he has scored at a premium level. So Zach Merritt, he's gone under the radar. He's lost 40k off his starting price, so he's definitely cheap enough. And the break-even is 89. The fixtures aren't amazing, but for a player of Merritt's caliber, he's someone that can defy those fixtures. And at fairly low ownership, and I think, 3.7? 3.7. I like him as a differential pick. And then the last option, more of a safe option, that's Rory Laird. I can afford him, 634k, break-even, another one where the break-even is relatively low. Does play the Pies this week, which should be a tough matchup. But again, it's Rory Laird. He should be matchup proof. So last trade, it'll be a toss-up between Walsh, Laird, and Merritt. I'm probably leaning in the Merritt direction at the moment, just because he's a little bit cheaper. Helps facilitate upgrades next week without having to boost. This will be the 4th boost that I've used, so I've really only got 1 left. But what else am I going to use a boost for? I'm either going to use a boost to get up to lead, I think, or I'm going to use a boost if I have another week like this and have to sideways trade out a premium. So that leaves me 143k in the bank. Team looking fairly good. Main regret is trading out Chandler early. I'm hoping that Ashcroft can deliver against Fremantle this week. I'll optimize the side. I'd prefer not to play Tyler Young, so I will do that. And yeah, looking fairly solid going into this week. So, captaincy, let's go in through that fairly quickly. St Kilda against Port Adelaide, Marshall, potential vice captain option. I really like Dunkley against Fremantle. Fremantle have given up a massive score to Dawson and a massive score to Bontempelli. So if you had Neil as well, I think he's a bounce back candidate, especially Neil in a revenge game against his former club. I'm going to go for Dunkley as my vice captain. Bontempelli, he's another solid option, but I don't think Hawthorn have given up many big scores to midfielders, mainly because their games don't have a lot of stoppages in them. So the player, I'm not going to overthink it. Clayton Oliver, couple of poor scores this week, probably a bit more forgivable, coming off limited preparation. I'll back him to bounce back. It's Clayton Oliver. He could go 160 this week, and all will be forgiven. So I think that wraps everything up from me. Let me know what your trades are down below in the comments section. Like I said, I think there's a lot of different pathways people will take this week. I think it's going to be a pretty pivotal week in the grand scheme of things. And if Will Day pops off, then I'm going to be in some serious trouble. Same with Cornelio to an extent. But I'm really, Zach Merritt is kind of the horse that I've backed. And hopefully he just doesn't do the same thing that Took did this weekend. So, as per usual, best of luck for this round ahead. I'll see you for the next video, and thanks very much for watching.